My name is Wendy Potomsky and I'm the managing partner and owner of Retake Furniture Rentals. Retake is once again a proud supporter of the Canadian Film Festival and is working to contribute to the Canadian film and TV industry by making it an easy and sustainable place to do business. Retake provides sustainable short and long-term furniture rental options to meet production schedules and product needs. Retake also understands the importance of set design and the dynamic nature of the film and TV industry, which is why we created a company to specifically support Canadian filmmakers. Retake can assist you in setting up your production office with sustainable alternatives to keep your team working safely as we all head back to work. We use sustainable approaches to minimize product going to landfill, which means any product supplied by Retake is helping to support the circular economy. Our in-house upholstery services can tailor our product to meet your set design requirements and match your color schemes. Contact us to discuss your office furniture needs. Our goal is to help you get back to work as safely and efficiently as possible. Stay safe, everyone, and enjoy the films and shorts at this year's Canadian Film Festival.
Celebrate Canadian filmmakers on Super Channel Fuse with an exclusive homegrown event.
I'm ready.
Go.
The Canadian Film Fest, presented by Super Channel, brings this year's festival into your home for a second year as a virtual experience.
Goodbye.
Every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night until April 18th. Enjoy the premieres of indie films and shorts from critically acclaimed and up-and-coming Canadian producers and directors.
And this is where the donkey starts talking.
Immerse yourself in this inspiring and spirited event, both on air and online, with live Facebook Q&A sessions that follow the films.
Makes sense. Start it.
Experience the Canadian Film Fest, proudly presented by Super Channel.
Hi, my name is Jacob Tierney, and I'm a writer and director, probably best known for Letterkenny.
And the Trotsky.
And the Trotsky.
I love the Trotsky. I used to have it on Blu-ray when Blu-rays were still a thing. I was a big fan. I loved it a lot.
Thank you. I love it too.
Winnie, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Winnie. I'm mostly a director, but I wrote Tokens.
What's Tokens? Tell us about Tokens.
Tokens. Well, here's my product placement here. Tokens is
expertly done.
I know. Wasn't that great? Done. It's all about
Tokens
timing,
is
right?
a novelty mug, in case anybody is curious about what it is.
It's a web series.
I have
Do you have one?
Transformers Revenge of the Fallen Slurpee Cup. So I'm classing it up today as well.
Tokens is a web series. You can find it on Facebook and the NFB website.
Fantastic. And I'm Ashley Cooper. I am a writer and also a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I've met you. Well, I've seen your work on social media, but I got to see your stand-up.
I've seen your work on social media. Always sounds to me like, you don't shut up, huh? Like, but it's true. I don't. But thank you.
Stand up. I'll tell you that right now. I miss.
What's that?
I miss going to see stand up. I love going to see stand up.
I miss comedy as an art. I miss stand up comedy as an art form.
Yeah.
Things are rough out there. Things are really rough out there. We thrive on rooms full of people who are like, there's like an energy exchange in the whole thing, right? And like when we all went into lockdown, like some producers were trying really hard to kind of like keep the fire alive and like doing virtual shows and stuff like that. And for some people that's working and it's scratching that itch as much as it can. But for me, I'm after a very specific thing when I'm up there, and just telling jokes to my webcam isn't quite cutting it for me. So I'm done. It's been over a year since I've been on a stage,
yeah,
and I'm dying to get back to it. I miss it so much.
It's hard to even do comedy on like a Zoom call. Like it's hard to tell a joke properly on Zoom. I don't even remember some funny person on Twitter did a thing of like just one side of somebody trying to make a joke in a Zoom call. And they're like, he's like, yeah, cut like when you're walking down the street. No, I said like when you're walking down the street. No, because what you had said earlier was and it was perfect. I was like, yes, that's the experience.
Yeah.
It's going to be funny when voices cut out. Oh.
Yeah, voices cut out, or like you get audio drift sometimes where like your lips don't match the audio because of like internet connections and shit. Like there's so many things in the way of their performance.
And being funny is hard enough.
Not to mention that, like, I mean, personally speaking, like so much of stand-up comedy is about body language as well. I think a lot of people take that for granted. It's not just tell funny things out of your mouth. It's like, it's the way you deliver it. It's the side eye you give the audience. It's the, you know, like there's so many different things that go into creating the performance of a joke. Like a joke written is very different than a joke performed. And Jacob, obviously, you know a lot about this, like directing comedy, like so much of it goes into like the whole, or you, Winnie, too, like it's like a whole body experience a lot of the time, right? Like, so like these Zoom shows and stuff like that, they're Band-Aids at best.
It's a cliche, but it's true that like comedy doesn't survive well in close-ups. You want it in masters, you want it in 2 shots, you want to let people move, you want to let them be in a frame together, because references is very important. Yeah.
And the rhythm goes away when in Zoom. That whole rhythm of hearing how it works just disappears.
And the audience participation, right? Like you don't think of stand-up as like a team sport, but it kind of is, right? Like without the laughter, like the whole tone changes, right? Like if you've ever been to a comedy show, you've definitely been to a comedy show where people aren't laughing. The dynamic is so different. The way the comedian performs the jokes feels different. Everything changes in the room. But that's every single Zoom show. That's like the bar. That's where things are as the standard at a Zoom show. And that's horrifying to me. Like as a performer, to just like be throwing the jokes out into the ether is just like, oh no.
Yeah.
Why don't we, I'm very curious for both of you, why comedy? That's something that I always find a very interesting conversation, because like there are like a million different things that you could be directing, but what is it about comedy that makes you go, ooh, yeah, that's the thing?
Go ahead, Winnie.
I don't even know if comedy is the thing for me, but it is the thing that I love laughing. So, you know, coming out of something that's painful, like something like Tokens, that came out of not succeeding in what I thought I should be succeeding at. And so I wrote myself as the underdog in something that was more obscure. And so you wanted to do it so that people can laugh at it, the situation.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked comedy, and it was always a big part of, I mean, what I liked, what I have enjoyed. And then it was honestly, like very crassly, it was the field that opened up for me, that people started paying me to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll keep doing this. I love it. I mean, I love lots of things, but if, you know, I think that if like, you know, Trotsky was kind of was my second film and kind of put me on the map. And I think because it was a comedy, people just started giving me jobs in that, you know, in writing or directing sitcoms. And I think that if the movie had been like a horror movie and people had hired me to do dramas, or I would have done that too. I was like, please pay me to do anything.
Yeah.
I definitely fetishize earning a living. It's my favorite thing about comedy.
I feel that the first short that I ever made was a comedy, and it was an 8-minute short, but suddenly I was a comedy director. That's what people assumed that I wanted. It's what people assumed I was, because I had made a comedy, therefore comedy. You know, it's funny sometimes how for a creative industry, we sometimes lack imagination about like where
sometimes,
you know,
chronically lack imagination, I would say. Chronic.
I'm being polite.
I love when I first started making, it took so long for me to get hired to do any TV. And people would always say this thing of like, well, you come from movies, so you're used to spending a lot of money. And I'm like, have you seen Canadian movies? Like, what are you talking about? It's
Wait, people in Canada are saying that?
Yeah. They're like, oh, well, you're used to working with those movie budgets. And I'm like, where's the movie? What are you talking about? TV has way bigger budgets than movies do. It's always was such a bizarre thing to hear. People still kind of say, they're like, yeah, they made shorts and they've, made an indie feature, but can they work with a budget of TV? And you're like, yes, it's a bigger budget.
Actually, I'm begging you to let me work with the budget of TV.
Like, that's a whole department now? That's amazing. I used to just be my mom, making craft, and like, it's so nuts, but yeah.
That's so funny.
Imagination is a big thing.
Yeah.
I think that's why calling cards are so interesting. Why it always kind of bugs me that people are so obsessed with not just like, you make a short film and it's like, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want to do.
It doesn't sum up your personality. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's part of you, but it's also hopefully there to demonstrate a skill set. And that you can do that you can tell a coherent narrative, for example, or that you have an understanding of tone. People ask me all the time about like the difference between acting or in comedy versus drama. And like, there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. It's the same thing. You still want to be truthful. You want to do, some people maybe are naturally funnier than others, but like, there's no different set of rules. You're still trying to get to the same place, which is to do something truthful and honest and successful. The skill set is basically the same thing. It's still listening, answering, paying attention to the other actors, being in the moment. Those are universal. There's no difference between a comedy or a drama in that way, as far as I'm concerned.
Do you get to direct drama, Jacob?
I have in my life. The truth is I haven't directed anything that isn't, I just actually finished this Fox show, but I haven't directed anything that isn't Letterkenny in like 5 years beyond this Fox show that I did, and then 2 plays. But one of the plays was a Tom Stoppard play, and it was very, very dramatic, very serious. And I love it. I mean, I love doing different things too,
Yeah, I think as artists we do, right? I mean, For me, part of doing tokens was that I don't get to do comedy. Like most of the work that I get is dramatic. And so therefore I don't have a funny bone in my, I don't have a funny bone. So even if I can create something that's comedic and that I find, actors laugh at it, audience laughs at it, I still don't have that comedic credit.
Right.
Yeah. That's how I ended up in stand-up actually, is like I started with a comedy short, but like my like real true love is in like weird sci-fi and horror and like genre stuff. But I love comedy as an art form, and stand-up was a way to like do it adjacently like where it's like it can be kind of its own thing, but it's also like serving like a similar thing, but it's at least separate enough that like, cause I can do that without people going, oh, so you make comedy, you like, you do, it's different enough that I feel like if I'm trying to put myself in this, if I'm trying to get to play with these toys, this isn't distracting people. They're like, okay, that's separate. Whereas like, if I decided to make like a comedy web series and then I was like, I want to make a horror short, people would be like, what? Like, because people want to put you in a sandbox, right? They want you to be, here are your toys, you play with these.
Yeah, but don't you guys also think that the advantage of comedy is that it's cheap? It's not sci-fi, it's not horror, it doesn't require, you don't need a car crash, you don't need it, you can do things that are available to people, especially people who are just starting out, making their own shit and not, with a lot of financing. If you have a funny idea, it doesn't need to be big, it can be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the very first thing I ever shot, like even before I went to film school or anything like that, was a comedy short about like a bachelor who was in his apartment and realized he had no food while he was hungry, and it was just like going on like the epic quest of like opening every cupboard and like going through all of the ingredients that you have to see what you could make and stuff. And it was like, it cost us nothing because it was just like you walk into the apartment, you take most of the food out of the cupboards and you shoot, right? Like
totally.
Do you test your jokes out a lot before you go on stage? Like when you're writing and stuff like that, do you and Jacob as well, like do you just write and then put it out, or do you test the jokes to see if it lands?
I mean, in stand-up, we have a built-in system for that in open mics, which are basically a way to go out and like perform a set of new material to see how it works in front of a room of usually like 90% to 100% of other comics. And it's like,
me and other comics being like,
what's that?
Me and other comics. No, like that's not.
Oh, I mean, most of the time, yes. Most of the time, the other comics who are like on their phone, who are just like waiting for their chance to go up. Like they just don't give a shit. They're preoccupied and whatever. But like there's always going to be like there's going to be like a handful that are like paying attention. Or if you're lucky, you can buddy system and go with people, and then you can get it on its feet and feel it out. And the people that are paying attention, you can see whether or not it's working on their phase.
Actually, I have a question for you. How long till you bail on a joke? Like how long, like a joke, you think a joke, this is my premise for you. You like a bit. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like how far will you go into fixing something before being like, ugh, fuck this isn't happening? Honestly,
not that far. I know a lot of people that will beat a dead joke to death.
Yeah.
They will just grind it into the ground. They'll be like, I swear to God, someone's going to laugh at this someday. But for me, I'm like, I try it once
to this joke.
Right? Like I try it once. I'm like, okay, that didn't quite work. I wonder if it was the delivery. I wonder if it was the room. I wonder if it needs to be rewritten. Maybe it needs another pass, and I'll play with it a little bit like on my own time. And then if I get it in another room and nobody laughs again, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like just get it. Like, cause I found stand-up comedy much after finding writing as a profession in like screenwriting. So like I'd been working in film and television for years by the time I tried stand up for the first time. And so I come from like that, like kill your darlings. This scene's not working. Chuck it. We've got a deadline kind of mentality. And so I'm just like, another idea will come. I don't have to be precious about these things. Like it's not working. Gone. This one's great. It stays. Like, whereas like I know some comedians will just like, they're like, no, but this is my thing. I worked so hard on the thing. And I'm like, yes, you did. It's not working. Go. Like
I sometimes have trouble with that, but when I'm directing and I hear like sometimes definitely on tokens, you would play the scene. And then when I called cut, usually if 50% of the crew start laughing, then I know that it's a good joke.
Oh, so yeah. I have a different rule than that.
Oh, yeah?
If the crew laughs too much, it's not working. Like if the crew laughs too much, it's too big, it's too broad. Like I think it depends on what you're going.
This is Letterkenny you're talking.
No, this is everything. This is like
everything.
I learned this on Trotsky. I actually feel like I learned it as an actor, as a child, where like I can remember, because I've been acting since I was a kid. And so like I can remember doing like I always played very emotional. I have sad eyes, so I played emotional children. And I would be like, if you're making the crew cry, it's usually going too far. Like you're usually kind of hitting the back row and you don't need to, because somebody's got a camera in your face, like right here. And I found it with comedy as well, that like I'm suspect of what crews laugh at. That being said, for Letterkenny, it's different because we've had the same crew for years and they know the show. So like then that can be okay. And to kind of answer your question from earlier, we just go in with so many jokes that I don't care if one doesn't work. It's like Letterkenny's about repetition. So it's like, maybe it's not funny now, but wait, it's going to be in 4 more episodes. You'll laugh eventually. It's like that kind of idea. And I am a big advocate, like with the way that Jared and I think work well together is that I believe in quantity of jokes. Like I'm like, there's a never ending kind of joke machine going on in my head. So eventually something will be funny. And Jared's very good at quality, being like, that one, that's good. We'll do that one.
You guys write together?
No. We don't have a room. We've never had a room. We don't write together. We write separately. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really handmade show, it really is just the two of us doing it. And we do have other writers, but they get rewritten pretty heavily. Even my scripts still get rewritten pretty heavily. Like Jared's voice is very clear and very specific. And so we break stuff together. Like we'll break a season and we'll kind of figure out where we want to go in the lightest possible terms. We try not to get very plot heavy, but we do like to have a thread, like a through line. It's usually something really simple, like so-and-so is single, so-and-so is in a relationship, like something like very light that we can kind of hang our hat And then we'll give writers like assignments, like be like, write this kind of storyline. Like, Jonathan Torrens writes the Mennonite episodes because he's in those. And then we just have we have like a bunch of writers who just give us, like Jared will be like, give me 5 pages of jokes on this theme. Like it's a cocktail and it's a sex position. Go make as many jokes as you possibly can, because we want lists, like we want like that kind of thing. So yeah, it's not a convention. It's definitely not a conventionally made show at all in that way. I mean, it also
that sounds weirdly like how a lot of stand-up jokes get created. It's like, yeah, I've got this idea for a premise about like how it's, whatever, it's car names are ridiculous. Here's 5 pages of those. In those 5 pages, there's enough for like a minute and a half of material.
Exactly. Jared and I'll drive to work and be like, invent radio stations and DJ name. It's like, it's Marty, Annie, and the dog on the coast. Like we just do, like, you'll kind of like how many of those can we do until one is either really funny or we bail on the idea. It's like, that's how things will end up in the show too, is like, oh, then we'll have them do that for, there's always like a guy, a girl, and an animal. That's the combination for a morning show and a radio. And then the name is like the wolf or the coast or something. And then you have to pick if it's hard rock or if it's hip hop or what kind of easy listening. It's it's like a mishmash game. And that's the way a lot of Letterkenny gets written.
Do you guys watch a lot of other comedy to get some of that?
No.
Those touch points? No.
I love watching other comedy, but the comedy shows I like are not like ours.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other comedies like
yours? Now that I said that, I was like, yeah, it's
like Letterkenny has such a very specific rhythm to it. Like I've never seen anything that operates on the same like.
That's kind of an interesting thing about the way the jokes go too. The jokes are kind of the rhythm jokes. Like it really is about hitting the rhythm. It's not like, it sounds ludicrous to say, but like it's almost like iambic pentameter. It's like you have to understand that to do Shakespeare properly, and then you can lose it. But like you have to understand what that rhythm means, because there's meaning in the rhythm. It's how you express the jokes, because so much of the humor is repetition. It's like you have to hit the beat. Which is ultimately which is why the show is kind of easy to make, because it's just like, there's always a fix. It's like, you got to do the rhythm. You got to do it. We got to hit the pace. There's not a lot of room to think about it, especially, 92 seasons in or whatever we are now. Like, it's like, you just hit that pace. And now the actors, what's cool too, is that now when new actors join us, they know it because they've seen it. And you don't have to, because at first people would be like, whoa, this is a lot of dialogue and this is really weird. And they'd be like, I know.
They can catch up faster now because there's a familiarity.
They've watched it. So they're like, I get it. This is how you guys talk in Letterkenny. It's not like talking in real life, but it's also not that mannered. Like you just kind of, you fall into it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
I guess it has no choice. It is what it is now. Again, it's like 400 seasons of this show, Are
you considering how it plays to an international audience when you're coming up with stuff? Or are you just like, it's Letterkenny, and if you don't like it, we're not for you sort of thing?
It's not even we're not for you. What I've found, and this was my experience before it actually kind of came out of the Trotsky, when people were like, why are you setting it in Montreal? Why are people speaking French? Like, why are you doing it? And I was like, I think the more specific you get, the more universal it becomes. And what we found with Letterkenny is that, sure, you might not, like, first of all, I love, whenever I talk to Americans, they're like, I guess you Canadians talk that way. And I'm like, no, we don't. Like, listen to me speak right now. I'm not talking like that. I was like, my parents watch with the closed captioning on. They don't understand what we're saying either. But what is universal is every town has like sports guys. Every town has like drug addicts. Every town has, it's like these people exist in whatever form. And if it's, soccer where you live, or it's football, or it's whatever, it can be whatever it wants to be. But the kind of the groups, the gangs of people, like, I think that exists pretty much everywhere. And the more specific we get, the more universal I think it ultimately becomes, because it's truer. You're doing something that's real. You're not.
Yeah, like when I sit down to watch like Dairy Girls, I'm not like, wow, I wish this was less geographically specific, right? Like, it's like, part of the appeal is that you're getting a peek into a world that you're not a part of, right? Like,
no one's like watching Flight of the Conchords and being like, can you stop with those Kiwi accents? It's like, no, that's
exactly
a new perspective here. It's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I mean, comedy is tricky. Wordplay comedy is always tricky with international, but like, I never think about stuff like that ever, if I'm being honest. Like, it's like, I want to find it funny first, and then I hope other people will find it funny. And that's kind of all you can do.
Do you write comedy for yourself, or do you write comedy like obviously I wrote Tokens for myself, and Ashley, your stand-up is, it's very specific. Do you write it more starting from yourself, or do you?
No, with Letterkenny, it was starting from the characters. It was starting from the idea that Jared had, right? But even if it's that idea and not my lived experience, like I didn't grow up in small town Southern Ontario as a farmer or a hockey player. I'm a gay half Jew from Montreal. Like, I'm not living in that same world, but I still want to laugh at the jokes because I like jokes, So it's like, that's still the first place that you have to go to, I think.
Yeah. My writing starts very internally in like a very specific way. Like my writing usually starts from like, I need to make something funny out of something that is very genuinely not funny.
Right.
Cause like I'm doing a very specific thing when I get on stage. Almost all of my material is about the trans experience. It's about systemic transphobia. It's about oppression. Like it's like a 10-minute TED talk that makes you laugh, basically, if I'm doing it right, at least. And so I always come from like, what is the thing that made me feel the worst this week? How can we laugh at it? And so like, I know that once I've found a version of it that I go, then I know I've figured it out. I can get that on its feet on a stage somewhere, and then go through the open mic process and figure out, is it just funny for me? Yeah. And is it, because I have this added barrier sometimes where it's like, it's not just, is it funny for the right reason?
Right.
Because I had this joke that I used to perform that I loved doing, and it always got like a great explosive laugh. It was like my one guaranteed laugh, no matter what room I was in. Because when I'm on stage, like a lot of the times I'm just in like a t-shirt, jeans, and like a plaid shirt. I have this joke about how they've come up with this stupid term called Autogynophilia, which is basically the idea that trans women are actually just men that get turned on by the idea of being women. And I just like address like what I look like in that moment. I'm like, yeah, lesbian Kurt Cobain over here is for sure walking around in a constant state of arousal or whatever. And it's like, it always gets like this laugh because I just look schlubby on a stage. Right. And after a while I was like, I don't know if you're laughing at this for the right reason, guys. Right. Like, and so I stopped doing it and I rewrote the joke, and it still works, but it's not, I never feel like it's at my expense now. And so sometimes that's a concern, because I've been on shows where literally the person right after me has transphobic material in their set, and the audience is still laughing at it despite the fact that I was just in front of them for 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Like I had one of my favorite stories to tell about transphobic material in stand-up comedy is I was hosting a comedy competition that happens here in Toronto called Comedy Brawl. And one of the contestants came up to me about halfway through the show nervously and was like, hey, so I have some like tranny material. Is that going to be offensive?
It already is.
If I like, is that going to be okay if I do that? And I was just like, we're going to find out. And he went on stage and he fucking just shit the bed. It was incredible. It was like everybody in the audience was like, can you not read social cues? Do you not know what's going on right now?
Someone who's opening with, I've got tranny jokes is probably not going down.
But like, think of the thing that the reason why I love that story is that it's so like there are so many levels to it, right? Like, because like there's just somebody that clearly knew that there was something wrong with their material.
Yeah,
was self-aware enough about it to come ask me about it, to be polite about it. Like to know enough that there was a problem to actually like bring it to me and be like, hey, is this cool? but then to also use a slur in the request. Like
It's loaded. There's a lot of layers there. It's a lot. Wow.
So like I have to worry about stuff like that. I have to worry about not just is it funny, but is it funny for the right reasons? Are you laughing at the right part of it?
Well, I think we think about that on the show too all the time. Like it's like, you know, we have a lot of especially sexual representation across the board, like queer characters that kind of go in through various lines, and it's always like. And I pulled back on jokes where I was like, enough with this kind of like because part of the thing of getting lists is like, it can get into way too much I'm fucking your dad material. And I was like, yeah, enough, we've nailed that. We've hit that. And what we try really hard to do, because Letterkenny is a very accepting world, but it doesn't live in the, like what I think of as like baking show comedy, where it's like, there are no stakes, no one's feelings ever get hurt. Everybody's perfect. Everything is fine. I don't like that either. I like to deal with the real world because that's where it's funny too, you know, like, and you can tell the truth and not be a dick. Like there's lots of different ways to be funny. And the rule that we have is that no bullying. It's no you're allowed to say whatever you want. You can't be a bully. You cannot pick on people because they are weaker than you. That is the thing that's when, to me, and no matter what the category is, that's when you've tipped over the line. It's like, that's not funny.
Yeah.
You're going to get into a sparring, you know, it's kind of like, it's the comedy version of the way we do fights, which is like, you can have a fight and then you shake hands afterwards and you have a beer because that's honorable. You know, it's like, we're not here to pummel you and we're not here to make you feel like an idiot.
Do you ever find that like you're listening to the jokes, you're writing the jokes, you're doing all that writing, but do you feel like sometimes if it isn't performed right, that it won't land?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Totally. If it goes too far in one direction or another, absolutely.
Yeah. Cause it's funny because I was writing some jokes and, in a safe space, I used a joke that may be seen as racist for some people. And then I asked the actor, how do you feel about this? It's generally sometimes, my partners and other people, white people who've read it, they feel like, oh, maybe we shouldn't say this joke, but it's really real and specific to our experience for tokens. And so that's why it was written for it and why it was, I think it's funny in the context of the show, but sometimes,
sometimes that's it, right? Is like somebody who's coming from outside of an experience to try to write a joke with the specificity of somebody that does have that experience, like just 10 degrees off that axis, and suddenly you're into like, maybe that's a hate crime though. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think what you're saying when you're so smart too, it's like, that's what we try to do as well. Is like, check in with your actors. Say, what do you think about this? Is this funny? Is this too far? Is this too, like, we check in, especially with our Indigenous actors all the time, because they're a huge part of our show. And we feel a responsibility because no other white people put Indigenous people on TV. So it's like, we love, Dio is like Dio Horn's one of my favorite actors in the world. And we use her as just like check in. Is this funny? Is this not funny? Which way would make this go? Which way would we have to tip this for you to feel comfortable doing it? And not just comfortable, but for you to be doing your real character and representing what you want to be representing here. And I think some people are so afraid to ask. It's like, ask, it's a joke. And if there's trust between the collaborators too, Deal to be like, no, that's not funny. And be like, okay, then it's gone. You're not going to do it. Or like, it's like, it's actually less scary once you start doing it. It's like, check in with people, find out how they feel. And then if they're not comfortable, change it. It's not the end of the world either,
Yeah. Trust is such a big part of it, right? It's like, you have to know where the heart of the inquiry is coming from.
Like Dio and them, they trust us because we have done right by, we do right by them. And because we've always engaged, but we do that with all the actors. It's like, I don't want a girl wearing a bikini if she doesn't want to be wearing a bikini. There's nothing worse than, like, even that's not good. It's like, if she's not comfortable, if the actor isn't comfortable in their costume, whether it's a guy or a girl, and we do a lot of revealing costumes on both guys and girls, it's like, then the joke won't sell. Because the joke has to be that you're confident in that outfit. So if you're not, then we'll find some other way to be funny or sexy or whatever. You know, it has to work with it has to work with the other people that you're making the funnies with. You can't do it alone.
So do you write, besides the pages and pages of jokes that work and stuff, do you guys overshoot Letterkenny? Like, do you like shoot more stuff and then see it? No, right?
Almost never. No, I'm like a machine. I like my days short. I do 3 takes. I don't shoot coverage. I don't like to give people footage they're not going to use or that I don't want them to use. If I don't like the way a shot looks, I'll stop shooting it because I don't want it to end up in the edit. No. And also, we're lucky. We're on a streamer, so we can do whatever we want with time. Like, we have episodes that are 19 minutes. We have episodes that are 38 minutes. Like, we really do kind of whatever we want. So, I mean, we've lost material for sure, but it doesn't happen a lot. And we definitely don't overshoot for the sake of it. Because, like, our actors, like, these scenes that they're coming in to do, like, we're talking about, we shoot an average of like 20 pages a day. So it's like, by the time you're done with that, it's just like, okay, bye, we're done, we're exhausted. You know, it's not like, let's go, and we don't do improv. So it's like, they're not, there's only so much the brain can take, you know?
You don't do improv. Wow, that's...
Very rarely. I mean, sometimes, but very rarely. There's so much dialogue to learn. You know, it's like, improv will be like a button at the end of the scene or something like that. But like, when you're memorizing 3 10-page scenes, like, you're not really thinking about improv. And also, again, with that rhythm we have, it's not really built for improv.
Yeah, I was just going to say the very specific tone and voice of the show doesn't really lend itself to that, right?
Correct.
What about you, Winnie? How do you feel about like improvisation and stuff like that on set? Is that something that you're comfortable with usually?
When I'm directing, I like a little bit of improv. Like, sometimes for me, when I'm not writing the material, I'll watch it and then I might do a little tweak that might, like, when I hear it, because sometimes when I'm not writing it, I'm hearing it for the first time on its feet, you know, in space. So I'll do tweaks then, for sure. And did you have any problems in tokens with kind of what we were talking about earlier, like the who's laughing and why? Because I feel like something with tokens, like, because of what it is and its subject matter, like, you want to make sure that, like, yes, that it speaks to the audience that you're after, but that also if people are coming in from the outside, that they're laughing for the right reasons. Was that ever a concern? I think I wrote it for the audience, like the POC audience. Like, ultimately, that's their experience. But at the same time, there are a lot of people, like my producing partner, and a lot of people who want to make change in the industry, which is, you know, and they just don't know, they don't have the language to talk about it. We don't have like all the right language. And so that's sort of the awkwardness of that became the comedy, right? Because you don't know what to say, because there's all kinds of, you know, there's pronouns that we have to learn. There's, you know, what is the right way to say this ethnicity? Do we want to, you know, how do we divide everybody? Do we categorize everybody in a box? And I just wanted to, like, you know, laugh at that, because it is awkward for some people.
It reminds me of one of my favorite shows ever was 30 Rock. And 30 Rock dealt with race on a regular basis, and not always that well. Sometimes it hit, sometimes it didn't. But one of my favorite jokes ever that I feel like exemplifies exactly what you're talking about, Winnie, is when Alec Baldwin is dating Salma Hayek. And he says something about being a Puerto Rican, and he's like, yeah, I've been meaning to ask you, what can I call you? She's like, what do you mean? I'm a Puerto Rican. And he's like, no, I know you can say that, but what can I call you? And she's like, you can just call me a Puerto Rican. And he just goes, that doesn't sound right.
Doesn't feel comfortable.
That's the barrier, right? It's like, why does it sound like an insult from when it comes out of my mouth?
Yeah.
I love that.
It's a pretty funny joke. What is there was something, what do you guys do either of you guys mentor or talk to young writers often? And do you have like stock advice you give people?
Ooh,
Because there, do you have like a set of things that you're like, look, I don't know, whatever it would be, right?
One thing that comes up a lot, unfortunately, too often, I think, is I'll often talk to young writers, and I'll be like, "What are you working on?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm working on this thing. It's a mob drama about this guy who whatever, et cetera, et cetera." And then this thing happens, and I'm like, "Oh, cool. Why that? Like, why are you working on that?" And they'll be like, "Well, that's what sells right now." And I'm always just like,
my old joke about what sells right now was like, sorry, you didn't mention a part with a vampire. When does the vampire come in?
And and I'm always like, okay, well, throw it out. Never look at it again. Delete the files. Like, if you're writing something strictly because you think that's what you could get made, you're starting from like the worst possible starting position. Like, it's already so hard to get anything done. And there are other people writing mob movies because other people love mob movies. There are people that have mob movies in their DNA. I don't know who these people are. But like they love it. They come from, they have a fucking stack of DVDs like this. They probably don't anymore. But like it's part of like how they like shaped themselves as a creative being. If you are writing it because you think there's a business opportunity, your shit is never going to work on the level that theirs does. If you're writing something, write it because it's in your DNA, write it because it's in your bones, write it because you have to get it out. Because at the end of the day, all we have to offer is ourselves, right? Like,
absolutely.
We like our individual voices as creators is what gives us value.
Well, also,
as storytellers,
especially when you're a young writer and you don't have the skill, you haven't put in the time or the work yet, because you can't have, because you're a young writer, to say like, oh, the other thing I'm good at is breaking a story or managing a room or whatever, all the other skill sets you could have when you're first starting out. I completely agree with you. It's like when people like, should I write a horror? Write what you like. Like write the best, write the thing that, write the thing you like the most is what I would say. What do you say?
Yeah.
Winnie?
I think it's also what you're obsessed with. It's what you're obsessed with, because writing is so hard, right? Like for me, I consider myself the young writer. I'll do anything, almost anything, to procrastinate from writing, including doing this,
Oh, me too. Because I'm doing this today, I was like, oh, I can't really do anything else.
I can't write.
Well, no.
The day's done. The day's already over.
This has been 24 hours that we've been talking about this.
Yeah. But like, like when I tell that story because I was that person. Like for a really long time, like when I left film school / quit film school, I was like, okay, what could I write that like maybe I could pull off? And it was like, I wrote like a really shitty little like indie drama about like a fucking, near to do well white guy who was just misunderstood or whatever, right? That never ended up anywhere because I didn't. Somebody was like, "What's it about?" And I'd tell them the plot. They go, "What's it about, though?" And I'd be like, because I didn't have an answer, right? Like, and then I probably wrote 3 or 4 scripts, and like they all progressively got better from like a craft level because you can't not get better as you're writing, but they were all just so empty. There was no meat on the bones, so to speak. And then I was eventually just like, if there were no limits, in the world and I could just write whatever I want, what would I write? And then I wrote a sci-fi allegory for domestic violence and toxic masculinity. And it got optioned. It basically launched my career, and it was like never got made because I live in Canada, and one of the main characters was a CG robot. But like it was me on the page. Every single page of that script what had me imbued in it. And I think the one thing that people don't realize when they're starting out is this is the only time that there are no limits and nothing matters. right? Like they're all trying so hard to write the one thing that's gonna get made, and you know, they all have the Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino stories in their brain, you know, but it's like that's not how 90%, 95% of us launch a career or build a career, right? Like it's like somebody sees something that they really respect and find value in, and then maybe you end up in a writer's room on a show as a coordinator, and then maybe that leads to another thing, and maybe if you're lucky in 10 years you get your own show optioned and made or whatever, right? Like so many people think of it as a sprint. Like I need to write the thing right now that's going to get made and is going to like send me into the stratosphere. But it's like, no, they're building blocks. Everything's a building block. It's a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take you time. You gotta look at the long term.
Yeah. Agreed.
I ramble sometimes.
I agree with you, Winnie, that writing is the worst.
It is the worst. So here's the thing. So I wrote tokens because I wanted to direct, and I needed material, and everybody that I knew, the working writers were working, and they were always busy. So
and writing is horrible. So
writing is horrible.
They're like, will you write a thing for me? I'm like, I'd rather die. I'd rather actually die. I don't want to write things for me. I want to write for you. Oh God.
Yeah, so I do things I can't write with noise, which I just discovered, right? So like I don't it makes it really difficult. So I will rather like Airbnb out someplace, like I'm, you know, like where I don't know anybody and I just have Wi-Fi, and I will just like hunker down. That would be ideal for me. So to be in someplace different where I don't have like distractions. And
I was adapting this book, and the option was running out. I had to write. I just couldn't write this fucking script. It intimidated me for like a bunch of reasons. Big book, like not big, but like the writer was a very famous writer, not like one of her most famous books, but still, like she just won the Nobel Prize, and I was like doing a thing to the book, and I could not make myself even start this fucking thing. And so I did exactly what you said. I just finished my third film, Good Neighbors. And so I had a little bit of money, and I knew a guy who had an apartment in Prague. And I was like, can I take it for a month and just go there and write with the Wi-Fi? It didn't even he was like, you can go, but it doesn't have Wi-Fi. And I was like, even better. I'm going to go. And I took The Wire on DVD, and I was like, I'm going to rewatch The Wire, and I'm going to write this script, this place with no Wi-Fi in this house. And he was like, here's a bunch of my friends. I was like, I don't want to know anybody. Literally, people were like, how was Prague? And I was like, I don't know. I can tell you about The Wire, and I can tell you about the script that I wrote. But I really like went somewhere.
Hey, the color of the walls.
Nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I keep thinking about building a writing retreat for myself, just so that I don't have to like have those distractions. So, I mean, that's my ritual for getting.
I love
anything
having
done.
Noise. I
write in public too. I don't mind that either.
I have tinnitus, so if I write in total silence, I'm still not writing in total silence. So I write with music on all the time. I can't listen to music that has lyrics in it. That always just like creates like Ghostbusters cross the streams in my brain and nothing works.
I used to listen to Sigur Rós for that reason. I was like, whatever gobbledygook language this is perfect. Like Scooby-Doo or whatever he's saying. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, I mostly listen to like video game scores, movie scores, like stuff like that, like stuff that's instrumental.
Video game scores?
Oh yeah, like some video game scores are on par with like the coolest Hollywood shit you've ever heard.
I'm sure you're right. I just feel like I was just imagining like trying to write with somebody playing a fucking game on their phone next to me, and I would be like, you once you isolate it, like some of them have beautiful orchestral scores. Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right.
Like, and like I'm not talking like, oh yeah, like I put on like an MP3 of like the the overworld theme from Super Mario World where it's like do like
Honestly,
You know?
nothing you just said made sense to me whatsoever. I don't know what an MP3 is. I don't know what a Mario World is. Love that.
You're still in Prague with no Wi-Fi. You haven't caught up.
I'm like, have you guys heard of The Wire and DVDs? This is amazing.
They got special features on them. It's wild.
There's interviews with the cast, guys.
I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, writing is like the most satisfying thing to be done with.
Very true.
Yeah, then you feel like you've accomplished something, but until you
yeah. There's the best feeling ever. But everything leading up to that feels like torture. Just feels like, oh. But I actually write quickly. Not quickly. I write a lot. When I actually write, I usually write between 10 and 12, 15 pages a day. Like I get it out there because I'm not good at, I don't really, if I'm writing for myself, I don't outline, I don't do anything like that. I just think about things for a really long time, like usually years. And then I'm like, one day I'm just like, okay, I can write this now. I can start it.
I'm like that, except I do the outlining stage.
Sorry.
Do you write beginning to end? Like, do you just
always? No matter what I'm writing, I always write in a row. Yeah, I write like narratively forward. I need to be able to. My rule is I need to be able to imagine my way through the middle of the second act, and I need to know how it's going to end. And then I don't mind if I don't know the mid 30, like the last 30 pages or whatever, like the bottom half of the second act. That I don't mind figuring out, but. Yeah, I've with the stuff that I've written the most successfully, I kind of just dream my way through it and it ends up doing what it's supposed to do. I always give young writers bad advice. I'm like, don't outline. But like my first drafts, I've thought about them for so long that they're not really first drafts either. They're usually like, it's like, I stew on ideas for very, very long time.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Before I do the outlining stage, but like I will sit on an idea for months and just like, it's like things are going on up here, but they're not getting written down. I'm not talking about them. It's just like, it's just happening in the background while I'm doing life. And then eventually I'd be like, okay.
Those are ideas marinating. It's like you're finding out where they go. And sometimes like, I'll have these moments where I'm like, oh, that's why he's there. It's just like something like, okay. Now this makes sense.
Yeah. Do you ever find the best, like I do a lot of driving because I live outside of the city. Most of my ideas come when I'm driving on the 401 because it's sort of rote. And then I can when I structurally, like sometimes I like fix structure.
I also live in the country and I find I do a lot of that on walks. I'll take the dog for like an hour. We'll walk.
Walking my dog or on long transit rides.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how stuff just gets shaken loose when you're not paying attention.
About it. I always think I'm going to do that on drives, but what I end up doing is just listening to podcasts endlessly. What are your favorites? What are you listening to? Murders.
Oh, you're like a true crime podcast person?
I mean, like I'm a gateway. Like my gateway drug was my favorite murder, obviously. But now that I really like long form ones, CBC does a lot of good ones. And there's some comedy podcasts. There's some other stuff that I listen to too. But like I do like I want someone to tell me a story. I want someone to spin me a yarn. And I do like to hear about murder because I don't want to hear about the news.
You're living in a dystopia when true crime murder podcasts are easier listening than the news.
Fuck.
Well, how about what are you watching right now? Like in terms of like the Canadian film and TV landscape today, what's catching your interest right now?
You gotta watch Pretty Hard Cases, which I directed, and I'm
nice.
really loving that. Because it's kind of it's like a different tone. It's dramedy, which is kind of nice to like play between some. Like someone Meredith McNeil, who's in it, is obviously a very talented sketch artist. So she's the one that's always sometimes like improvising, but it's got a serious tone because it's a cop show. So
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I'm still sad Baroness is over. I love that show. It was so funny.
Yeah, Baroness.
This one sketch show is just so great. What else am I watching? I mean, honestly, I watch so much garbage, and then I don't even remember what I've watched. I feel like I put on a movie the other day, and halfway through, I was like, "You've seen this movie." Oh, pandemic, you are not helping my brain. Like I am, it's not, it's like in one ear, out the other these days. I'm really not trying to even challenge myself. I'm watching this is not Canadian, but I'm watching this British detective show, and I was texting with a friend of mine. I'm like, I'm watching this British cop show about like a spunky female cop and like a guy who's wrongfully accused. And she was like, is this a bit? You're describing every British cop show. And I was like, it wasn't a bit, but it will be now. And I was like, and by the way, don't worry, all the important people are white. So it's functioning as it should in the British cop narrative sphere. Like, I'm sure somebody has a black girlfriend or whatever, but like, don't worry, we're good. What are you watching, Ashley?
I, to my great embarrassment, just finally watched Schitt's Creek.
I've heard good things. People really like that show.
They love that show.
Well, I had watched the first 3 episodes when they first aired, and I was like, this is really cute, this is really fun, and then just got distracted with life. And then the reputation for the show kept doing this. And I was like, really? I was like, okay, eventually I have to get to that. And then I didn't. And then I didn't. And then I didn't. And then the world ended, and suddenly I had a lot of free time. So my partner and I were like, should we finally give it a shot? We were like, okay. And then we watched an entire season in one sitting, and we were like, it very quickly became like, do you want to watch an episode of the show, to do you want to watch our show? Like, it so quickly became like one of the favorite things that we had ever watched together. And we still like regularly quoted at each other and everything. It's shocking how quickly it found its footing and just like did this. Like, it's extremely impressive, and not like, it's not comedy, but I recently saw Blood Quantum, and holy shit. Wow, that was a powerful movie.
Blood Quantum yet, but I remember reading that script, and I love that script.
It's incredible. It's so good.
This is also from like last year, but if you're looking for another good Canadian movie this is from Montreal, but Antigone. I don't know if you guys have seen Antigone.
No, I haven't.
It is fucking spectacular. It's really, really worth watching. It is a remarkable film.
I've heard really good things about it.
I watched it on a plane, and I could not stop crying. And I was like, is this the altitude? So I watched it again when I got home, and I was like, it wasn't the altitude, it was the movie. It's a really good movie. Because, you know, like sometimes on planes, I'm just like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel very emotional about this right now. And it's like a fucking...
Both their moms are named Martha, and it's just like, and you're like, wait a second, something's wrong with this.
If Zack Snyder's making you cry, you're on an airplane. This was not that. It's so good. And the lead actress is just spectacular. Like a tornado, this girl. And
nice.
It's really amazing. Yeah.
How about you, Winnie? What's on your to watch list recently? Other than Pretty Hard Cases.
Other than plugging your own show.
I know, it was not really my show yet.
I understand.
Yeah. I love Ted Lasso. I love everything about Ted Lasso. It's the one comedy recently that I was just like laughing hysterically with my headphones on by myself.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
I have not.
Yeah. I liked it a lot. I didn't love the middle of it. I thought it lost its way in the middle, but it rallied for the end of the season. It got a bit too heavy with the pop song montages and the sloppy sentimentality for me at one point. But I really did. Jason Sudeikis is like among the most likable people you can possibly put on a screen. So like, there's so much to like about that show, and it looked gorgeous, which is nice too. I loved it aesthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody says it's very gentle watching, which sounds like right up my alley right now.
No, it's like if you're in a Schitt's Creek vibe, Ted Lasso fits right in there. You can slide.
Nice.
You can slide right into that. Well, hey guys, this was really fun chatting with you.
This was great. I had a blast. I could keep sitting here talking about comedy shit forever.
Yeah. Well, good luck with everything. A happy pandemic. I hope everyone gets a vaccine really soon.
Oh Lord, I know.
I hope so.
Hopefully we can do this in person soon.
Oh God, I don't know when that will be, but yeah, I hope so. I hope so too. Maskless and in person. That would be the key. Inside, maskless, in person.
Right? There's a high bar to set these days.
Sure is. It sounds like we used to call it just going to a bar, but now it's like a really big deal. All right, guys, this was a lot of fun. Mwah. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks for the invites, guys. Thanks, Canadian Film Festival.
Yeah.